welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing-related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel, click that notifications button, and get a new notification whenever a new video is uploaded. I've decided to upload a maximum of 2 videos a day just because I don't want to oversaturate the channel. Whenever I do, I seem to spread the views rather than get them all into one video. So obviously I'm oversaturating it. So to keep people's interest and keep you guys interested and not bore you all to death, I've decided to maximize it at a couple of videos a day. So I will be bringing more videos tomorrow. I'll be discussing the Sonny Edwards fight, the Bivol and Richards fight, as well as the Parker Chisora fight, but that will be tomorrow. This particular video is about Chris Eubank Jr. And I'm not going to go too deep into his fight because it is what it is. You know, he's fighting Marcus Morrison after a long time out of the sport. You know, the last time he fought properly, a proper fight, was in February 2019. So we've gone past 2 years now. Okay, he fought Korobov too, and I felt that he, you know, was struggling early in that fight. I believe it ended in the second round, because Korobov picked up a bit of a freak injury, his body breaking down on him. But you can't really count that as a fight. That was in December 2019. So really, he's been inactive for a long time, and he's working with his new trainer now, the legendary Roy Jones Jr. So, you know, I've always said, when you get a fighter who's working with a new trainer, they're going to want to put new things into practice. That's just the reality. That's, you know, they're going to take on a guy who's not considered a massive obstacle to try and practice the things that they've put, you know, into the gym. So I understand that, and I'm not critical at all. I think where people are critical is the fact that this fight is on a pay-per-view platform. It's, you know, it's not just this fight, it's the general card that a lot of people are criticizing. Whatever the case might be, Marcus Morrison is a decent domestic level fighter. He's got a record of 23-3. He has losses to Jason Wellborn and Tyan Booth, who are known names on the domestic scene here in the UK. Tyan Booth in particular is very popular since making his own YouTube video channel. And then you've got a very, very good win that he had, Marcus Morrison, against Emanuele Blandamora, who was the former EBU champion, the former European champion. So he's no mug, but it's a massive step up. He's ranked 84th in the world by BoxRec. Eubank ranked 5th in the world. So I don't want to go too much into this fight. I expect Eubank to win. I expect him to win in great fashion. He is just so much faster and more explosive in the pocket than Morrison, and I think it's a mismatch. However, what I found more fascinating in recent days about Eubank is some of the interviews that he's given. He gave one interview where he actually openly spoke about Adam Booth and what went wrong there. And Adam Booth has had obviously some highly sort of spoken about, contentious, acrimonious breaks from fighters. You know, George Groves springs to mind, David Haye, Chris Eubank Jr., but you never really get details. So for instance, when it came to George Groves and David Haye, I read so many rumors online, but they were just rumors. I want to clarify this. I do not have any inside knowledge. I'm not saying any of this is true or anything like that. I'm simply relaying some of the things I read, okay? I read that there was a business deal between the fighters where things went wrong. I read that there was another rumor I read was that George Groves was asked to give more money in terms of his cut to his trainer. I read another rumor online that Booth had asked George Groves to make an investment in Northern Cyprus, in properties in Northern Cyprus, and Northern Cyprus is considered an illegal state by the United Nations. So when he made that investment and realized that he couldn't sell on the property or whatever it was, that they fell out because of it. I have no idea what occurred. As far as I know, this is all a whole load of rubbish. I'm not questioning the integrity of Booth at all. All I'm saying is that there's always seems to be a mystique about Adam Booth. You know, it's part of, he doesn't really talk much about himself. And, you know, you've got that nickname, the Dark Lord, because he never, you know, he's got this gaze about him and he never really gives that much about himself. But whatever the case might be, Chris Eubank Jr. revealed from his perspective, his side of the story, what went wrong. He was supposed to be sparring on Venom Page, who is an MMA fighter, a very exciting guy to watch, by the way, very elusive, slick striker. And he sparred him for 1 round. And then after that 1 round, Chris says that he demanded that there was a early 30-second break between the rounds. And Page's trainer was saying, no, it's 1 minute between the rounds. It's a sparring session. This is how we do it. But Eubank was saying, you've come down here to spar me, my gym, my rules. You're going to do what I say. Otherwise, leave the gym. And apparently they got out the ring and they left. Now, again, I have no inside knowledge of the... Oh, by the way, he also said that at that point, Adam Booth left with them. So he was obviously disgusted at Chris Eubank Jr.'s behavior and he left with them. Now, again, what I'm saying is I'm speculating here. I have no idea what happened. I could be way off the mark. But Venom Page is so slippery that I could imagine that first round, he's very, very elusive, great upper body movement. Check him out. I reckon that he would have made Chris very frustrated in that first round. I have a feeling Chris would have struggled to land shots on him and Page would have been moving around the ring. And he's the sort of guy that doesn't just move around the ring and he's fluid. He mocks opponents while he's doing it. Now, if that had happened in the first round, Chris might have thought to himself, let's see if I set a tempo if you can keep that up. So if we're going to have a 6-round sparring session, for instance, let's do it with 30-second breaks instead of minute breaks. And we'll see how cocky you are at the 4th round when you're not getting away from me and I'm unleashing these shots on you. Now, bear in mind, Chris Eubank is the sort of guy who doesn't take sparring lightly. He knocked out a guy who, this was years ago now, who was way below his level, if I remember rightly, and he posted it online, which is something you don't do. You know, when you knock someone out unconscious, spark out, clean out like that. It's like an unspoken rule of what happens in sparring stays in sparring. This guy was a novice. He was an amateur or whatever he was. He wasn't a professional fighter. When you knock a guy out that violently, you don't really put it out there to mock the guy. So clearly he is concerned about his image to the world. We know that about Chris. And, you know, if Venom Page was causing him some issues, which I have no doubt he may very well have been in that first round, he might not have liked that, decided to change the rules on the spot. And Adam Booth didn't like his behavior, having invited them down to sparring. They've come all this way for 1 round. I can imagine how that would have gone sour, right? And so Chris Eubank strikes me as a sort of guy who pride plays a massive, massive role in who this guy is. And yeah, look, I'm being a bit of a pound shop Freud here. Okay, I've never met Chris Eubank. So who am I to judge? You might be thinking. I'm not trying to judge. What I'm trying to do is understand the mindset of Chris Eubank. And you guys know I love these sorts of explorations. I've got my own video that I've put up where I discuss the similar mentality between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury and Muhammad Ali and how that differs to Anthony Joshua's. Okay, and that was a popular video. A lot of you guys enjoyed that. And I love videos like Hatman's video. I got to hear it through the first time the other day when I was going for a nice long drive, a 40-minute video, which was brilliant. I was engrossed, where he was talking about his own perception of Fury and Ali. And when I did my video, it was in response, by the way, to one of the videos that he did first discussing the psychology of it. So it was, you know, this exploration, whoever's doing it, when they're clearly intelligent people like Hatman is, or whoever's out there discussing these sorts of things, I really enjoy this sort of concept. And that's what I'm trying to do with Chris Eubank. I'm not trying to hate on the guy or anything like that. And I don't know him. But I'm trying to understand his mindset and what that means for the fighter going forward. Because we heard him again call out Golovkin. And we've heard David Haye, who is friends with Eubank, say that he believes that Eubank will knock out Golovkin. Now, in the past, that was a silly, in my opinion, not silly, but an unlikely, very unlikely outcome. Golovkin is aging, though. And the one thing about Golovkin is that he has never been the sort of guy to really punch with you. He'll cover up. He'll take shots off the elbows and the shoulders and the arms, top of the forehead, areas where he can't really be hurt. And the minute you finish your combination, he follows you out and then he goes to work and he breaks you down. So when you're throwing shots, he's not really throwing back, but the punishment comes immediately afterwards. But when guys are throwing combinations and getting out, they can have some success. See Curtis Stevens before the terrible knockout. He had a little bit of success. Danny Jacobs had some success using this approach. Well, Chris Eubank Jr., if he fights that sort of raiding style where he's jumping in and throwing these fast, vicious combinations, which he's so good at doing, and then stepping all the way out in a manner that prevents an aging Golovkin from following him out and then punishing him for it, who knows what Eubank could do? That's the thought process, right? The reality might be somewhat different because Golovkin is very, very good at getting at jabbing a guy's face off. The most accurate jab in the sport, statistically, according to CompuBox, and it is a vicious thudding jab, and he's not afraid to get on the back foot and jab. So he could make Eubank trying to jump in on him and jab his face off all night and, really make him pay in the way that George Groves did when he fought Eubank. So I'm not saying this is a foregone conclusion by any stretch of the imagination. It's, I would still probably favour Golovkin even at this age, but it's a more interesting fight than it once was, perhaps when people started accusing Eubank of losing his pen, when they were supposedly going to fight and then the deal wasn't signed for whatever reason. Now, because of that, and because I'm trying to understand Eubank's mentality here, he clearly seems to be the sort of guy, going back to that Page story, who his ego needs to be stroked. And for me, I've always felt like Eubank has a chip on his shoulder in that he's got something to prove. And one thing about Eubank, he, one of the most beautiful photographs I've seen in boxing, in the entire sport, is a photo of Chris Sr., his dad, holding him from behind, from the stomach, and lifting him up in celebration of Chris winning his IBO title. And Chris has got this beaming smile on his face. And it's this beautiful moment of pride between a former warrior in Senior, holding up, lifting on the shoulders, so to speak, another warrior, his son, who's immensely proud of, who he believes has reached a summit. Now, I'm not going to sit there and go into, what that particular title is compared to the others. We all know that. Forget that. That's not the point. The point is the pride that was shown. And it's a very rare photo, really, of seeing Chris really smiling. Often the case, his smile's a smirk. There's an air, he's aloof. There's an air of contemptuous superiority in which he observes other people with. And a lot of people don't like him because of that. But one thing you have to say about Chris, he conducts himself well in the sense that you don't really hear him in any controversial situations. He's well-spoken. He's a consummate professional in terms of keeping himself fit. But that arrogance does carry away from... See, the difference between cockiness and arrogance, because I love cocky fighters, but arrogant fighters I don't tend to warm to. And the difference for me between cockiness and arrogance is a cocky guy is a guy who might put down opponents, but doesn't put down fans, okay? Or doesn't see others as lower than him when they're not opponents. So Muhammad Ali was cocky, okay? There's an element of that you like. Paulie Malignaggi, Roy Jones Jr., Tyson Fury. These guys are cocky. Arrogant is more like Adrian Broner. To me, this is just what I'm saying, what I see. Arrogant is a bit more like Chris Eubank Jr. sometimes, where he'll talk to a journalist and he's looking at the journalist, or the journalist asking him a question that he might believe to be stupid, and he will look at him and basically tell him you're stupid. His dad, Chris Sr., was cocky. Chris Jr. has more of an arrogant vibe to him. And I think a lot of people struggle to warm to that. But he seems to be maturing. He seems to be softening slightly in that regard. But it's always been carried over to trainers too. And he openly says, why would I listen to a guy that I feel I know more than? Now, he might not know more than them, but that's what he feels. Does Chris Eubank Jr. know more about boxing than Ronnie Davis, who's been in the sport for so long? I don't know. But he clearly feels he does. And he will always say, when a trainer will tell me you have to start at this time, I have to do this, I would always ask, why do I have to do this? And it's that thing of him looking down on others with contemptuous superiority. Well, now he says, when Roy Jones Jr. tells me to do something, I don't question it. Because he's been there, he's done it. That's the legendary Roy Jones Jr., right? So he's finally found somebody that he's willing to listen to, that he considers to be of superior knowledge to himself. Now, this can end up being a match made in heaven, because one of the things that Roy Jones also has is the ability to flatter somebody else. He talks about the explosiveness of Eubank. He speaks about the things he can go on to achieve. He could be the most dominant guy in the division, and every time he speaks about him, he's flattering him. And so that ego of Eubank's is stroked. And Eubank is a fantastic athlete, very fast, great stamina. And having stamina when you're being explosive is a difficult thing to come by. It's the same reason that 100-meter runners don't always translate as well to 200 or to 400, because 200 and particularly 400 is about power running. It's about maintaining that run for a long period of time, that explosiveness for a prolonged period, rather than just acceleration, which is a very short flash of light, of energy, so to speak. It's more prolonged. Well, Eubank is capable of having that 200-meter stroke 400-meter type of athleticism where he can keep it going. And Roy Jones, like I said, different type of athlete to Eubank. He was faster, he hit a lot harder, but he's still a brilliant athlete that relied on his athleticism, and so is Junior. So there's going to be certain things that translate that he's going to be able to show him and teach him. And, you know, one of the things that Roy had, he could use little feints and twitches, and because he was so devastating with his power and he would hit so hard, it would make fighters nervous around him. So they would pull back, they would get into defensive mode, when really he's just taking a period off to take a breather, right? Well, Eubank doesn't have that luxury, but Eubank has more natural stamina. So they're different types of athletes, but they're still very good explosive athletes. And there's a lot that you could teach him. So is this a match made in heaven, where you're going to see a legendary fighter who's a brilliant trainer in his own right, taking over a kid who's a great natural raw diamond, a natural talent, and they're going to end up having terrific success? Or is this another ticking time bomb? What happens if Eubank loses to Golovkin, or he loses to another fighter? There's talk of Charlo, whoever it might be. If he loses, are we going to see this permanent personality change where he seems more mature and he says, you know what, I'm going back to the drawing board, I'm finally with a trainer who knows his stuff, I've got a lot to learn, I will come back better? Or is he going to blame the trainer somehow and seek to be that lone wolf again? Can he ever be a success as a lone wolf? And will it make a difference now that he's got this terrific trainer, or this terrific fighter turned trainer behind him? Let me know what you think. I'm really interested to hear people's opinions on this. Thank you for watching. Take care. God bless.